Alright, that looks like I've been given the go-ahead. Oh my. Hello everyone, welcome to SpeedGaming. Welcome to Sonic Adventure 2. I'm going to be taking you through this game for the next 40 or so minutes. Hopefully it doesn't take 40 minutes. So before I get started with the run, I have to give a preamble that I always give for the start of a hero story run, because there is a major skip in the first stage of the game, which I'm not going to have time to address as I'm going up to it. Basically, I'm going to be approaching a speed pad about 40 seconds into the stage, which I need to trick the game into not capping my speed before I reach it, execute a precise jump off this speed pad, which I'm going to be using a pause buffer to do, and if I get that executed correctly, it's going to launch me forwards and then launch me sideways and skip about 30 seconds of the stage, but it's very precise. Some people say it's borderline random, so I might get it, I might not get it, even if I execute it quote-unquote correctly. We'll see if it happens. But either way, we're going to get this started in 3, 2, 1, and go. So, Sonic Adventure 2, Hero Story. It is a speedrun. It's got multiple different characters you use, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. We're starting in City Escape with Sonic, and we start with this boarding section. This is only one of 2 instances in Hero Story where you actually have these boarding controls. This is only going to last about 25 seconds, and then we get into playing Sonic's regular gameplay. And then we don't see it again until the end of Metal Harbor, and then there's no more boarding. Maybe they should make a full game of this, I don't know. Sonic Riders doesn't count, by the way. So, going down these ramps, which I'm trying to get particular trick jumps off to go down them a bit faster, and now we get to control Sonic in general. And you're seeing that Sonic's basic movement in this game is very much about using the spin dash and chaining spin dashes together to maintain high speed. So I'm coming up to the skip now, let's see. Is the game kind? Easy. Always get it every time. You don't get that every time. And since I've approached this with a lot of speed, the camera is going to invert. I can't see where I'm going, so now I need to navigate this rail and stair section without being able to see where I'm going, including making turns on these rails. So I'm needing to make particular turns at particular times to maintain my speed. It's a lot of different stuff. So coming into the truck section here, and you really get to see how the spin dash mechanics work in this game here. While you're going down a hill, you want to just let a spin dash roll. It behaves like a ball in that way, that it's just going to accelerate while it's rolling down a hill. Whereas if you're going along a straightaway or going uphill, you want to keep unchaining, you want to keep unrolling the spin dash and then keep chaining them together so that you can maintain your speed, kind of like I'm doing there. And that's what most of Sonic's gameplay is going to look like in the segments where Sonic is just moving through the stages as normal. This is also a very glitch-heavy game. There are a lot of skips, a lot of tricks, some involving gravity manipulation. It sounds really weird, and it is kind of weird. You'll see more of that as we get to the relevant sections. So we come now into the first boss fight, Bigfoot. This is typically always supposed to be a 21-second fight that I'm not going to gain control for a few seconds, then I'm going to go to the front box that you see on the screen here and just repeatedly jump into his cockpit. If this is executed perfectly, then you can get 4 hits on the first frame without him being able to move. And messing it up, alright. Yeah, the camera is not exactly cooperative during boss fights, because the camera always tries to keep a boss on screen, which doesn't always give you a good view of your surroundings. 69 on the timer though, that's alright, I'll take that. So the fastest achievable time there is a 21:39, just for comparison's sake. Coming now into the first Knuckle stage, Wild Canyon. So these stages are different from the Sonic and Tails stages, in that there's no fixed endpoint. Instead, you have to find 3 pieces of the Master Emerald, which are randomly generated, and we use hint monitors to tell us where to go to our next piece. There's also pieces just hanging around inside the stage, which I can see without necessarily needing to get a hint. I'll pick those up if I see them. But they're not very common, and they're typically, you know, it's considered very good RNG to get free pieces, as we call them. I could have seen this piece if I was observant, but I missed it, so that's an example of a piece where I could have just seen that early for nothing if I'd seen that on screen and been checking the correct spots. But it's a lot of information to keep track of during the Knuckle stage, and because of the random nature, like, it's different every time. So if you're trying to check every possible spot at all times, that's a lot of visual information to be processing, and it's a lot of camera control to be looking in particular directions. Like, it's a lot of stuff, honestly. The Knuckle stages don't look very involved, but they are actually very complex once you dig under the surface. Tails starts with a boss fight, a very easy boss fight, which is already over. You just face towards Eggman and fire towards him a few times, and he barely fights back. But we go straight into a Tails stage after this, and Tails' stages are a lot harder than his boss fights. The issue with Tails as a base character is that movement is considerably more difficult than it is with Knuckles and Sonic. Knuckles and Sonic both have ways to gain instant acceleration. Like, you can get moving with Sonic and Knuckles pretty easily, and it's also pretty easy to maintain that speed, but it's not really the case with Tails, where you need to do a bit more work to get him moving quickly, and then once he's moving quickly, it's a fair bit more difficult to actually maintain that speed. It's the easiest way to lose your speed with Tails is simply to corner too sharply on the ground. Like, Tails doesn't do ground cornering too well. So what you're going to see me doing a lot of the time is actually jumping and then doing my cornering in the air, because your momentum doesn't decay the same way while you're airborne as it does whilst you're grounded. And this is, like, ironically a little different how the other characters work. Like, Sonic is pretty much the opposite, where if you are in the air and you corner really sharply, that really destroys your speed as Sonic, but not as Tails. So the gimmick of Prison Lane is that there's all these locked doors that you can see that are opening before me. This is because I'm destroying fixed enemies that basically guard these locked doors. Once you get these enemies destroyed, the gates open. And there's some enemies that you can target earlier than intended to open gates early. I'm coming up on one of those just now, after this gate. Got it? So if you aim in the wrong direction there, the game actually prevents you from getting an early lock-on at all. I don't understand how that works. Another early lock-on there, getting the enemy that's was by the ceiling by aiming through the first ceiling, but then messed up the second little gate hop. It's a little tricky to get those, mainly because of how you're fighting with the camera to be going in the right direction and keeping your speed, since you need a lot of speed to make those jumps, and also not cornering too much so that you lose that speed. Like, it's a little involved to get those gate hops, but thankfully the gate is a little wider. The floor it provides is a little wider than it appears, so it's not as punishing as it looks, but it's nonetheless pretty precise. So Metal Harbor is Sonic's second stage, and it's going to be the first stage where we get a character upgrade. About 20 seconds into the stage, going to be taking a pulley up to the Light Dash, which is going to let us use the Light Dash to dash across trails of rings. It's a very handy feature. The only annoying thing about the Light Dash is, like pretty much every other special action that Sonic has, it is on the same button as those other actions, the B button. This is a game where, I mean, that's an example of that messing me up just there. I somersaulted instead of light dashing, because it's all the same button. This is a pretty, like, context-sensitive game as far as the inputting goes, where A is jump and B is everything else. Somersault, light dash, bounce, like, it's a lot of stuff. So part of, like, learning to run this game well is just learning when certain actions are going to occur when you try to use the action button. So I stored a somersault under that barrier so that I could continue to run under it. I'll go a little more into what that is in the upcoming Shadow fight. Using a bit of a gravity jump there to bypass the platforming on that rocket platform. As I mentioned earlier, gravity is very dynamic in this game. The way the game handles it is that basically whilst you are on a slope, the direction of gravity is temporarily reassigned. So, like, pretty much as Sonic is standing, whichever direction Sonic is standing on, that direction is, for all intents and purposes, down until you go, like, under a certain speed threshold, and the game tries to reassign the direction of gravity to true down. And this can be exploited by basically making gravity face a different direction and then jumping. You maintain that skewed gravity whilst you perform that jump, which in most cases, assuming you're standing on an upslope, means you can just jump straight up with the speed as though you were just moving forwards. And you can get absolutely massive jumps doing that. So I mentioned storage before. This is another byproduct of every action being on the same button, where the game needs a way to differentiate what you're trying to do. So holding B makes you start charging a spin dash, but it takes a second for that to come out. And in that duration, before the spin dash actually physically starts, the game considers you to be somersaulting. And one of the properties of somersaulting is that you get to damage enemies, which is what I'm doing to Shadow here just by running into him. And your hitbox is also shorter while you're somersaulting, so if there's any barriers that you need to somersault under, you can simply run under them whilst you're holding B, because the game considers you to be somersaulting, even though you're still in the running animation. It's very strange. Now, Green Forest, another very technical stage, and like City Escape, it has a major skip. Like City Escape, it's a very difficult skip, And like City Escape, I'm only really going to give it one attempt. Like, I was lucky enough to get City Escape skip on the first attempt. I would have just progressed on without it if I didn't get it. Same is probably going to be true here, because this is a very difficult skip, which it saves a decent chunk of time, but it's not like in the region of it saves a minute or anything, and it's very possible to get stuck on just attempting this skip. There are a lot of variables that determine whether this skip succeeds or fails, and there's a lot of, like, variables of which version of the skip you're even able to attempt, depending on how you start it. Like, it's a really nightmarishly complex skip, where I'm going to be running up the tree halfway through the stage, and this is going to be done by using one of the gravity exploits, where one of the little features of this game is what we call loop speed. The game basically helps you around loops by giving you a burst of speed when you hit specific positional triggers going around loops, but if you go off a loop and, like, homing attack in that skewed gravity direction, it still gives you that burst of speed, but it forces you downwards, which is quote-unquote sideways. And that's going to help me get onto the tree, hopefully. Okay, I'm going to go without it. I don't like that. You can watch pretty much any top-level run on the leaderboard and see the skip perform there. I needed to go outside of the loop and homing attack in the right direction so that it would basically launch me into the tree and start me running up it. You don't really have control over Sonic after you start that, though, and then you need to find a way to exit the tree safely and in a position where it's actually going to result in you successfully getting to the next part of the stage. There's a lot of different ways that you can, like, successfully start the skip but not be able to finish the skip, and it just results in you either dying or needing to basically fall back down to where the skip starts. So it's not exactly an easy skip. So we're finishing the stage in regular fashion instead, quote-unquote regular fashion. Still a couple of small skips being used there and speed tech to generally speed things up. But finishing with a 142, pretty pedestrian pace as far as Green Forest goes, it must be said. So Pumpkin Hill is the second Knuckle stage, and it's a very random stage. I mean, they're all random, but this one is especially random. This is the first upgrade stage for Knuckles. We're going to go straight forward and get the shovel claws. I'm going to grab a hint monitor at the same time to cancel the animation so I can get moving a little faster. Okay, so the issue with the Knuckles stages is when you get pieces that can have the same hint text but be in multiple locations. And Pumpkin Hill is the biggest offender for this. The first piece that I got there, second skull from the top, that is a piece where just from the hint text, you can't automatically tell where it is, because that can be one of two locations. And Pumpkin Hill, compared to the other Knuckle stages, this is another one, compared to the other Knuckle stages, it has the highest ratio of pieces that are like that, where, yeah, I got screwed here. Where just from looking at the hint text, doesn't necessarily tell you where you need to go. So you either need to get a second hint or just make an informed decision about which location is most likely. As far as the, you know, distribution of pieces, there is no weighted factors for first pieces. Like, you get, when the game rolls your first piece, it's, as far as we know, like an equal chance based on how many values the game can generate for a specific piece. Basically, there's no factors that are going to make pieces more or less likely on your first piece. When you get your second piece, however, it is guaranteed to be far away from where your first piece is. The game looks at what your first piece was, and it prevents you from getting piece 2s that are close to where your piece 1 was. And then the game looks at what your piece 1 and piece 2 was, and it does a lot of, like, you know, complex mathy stuff to look at which piece 3s it can generate. The basic gist of it being that it tries to generate a wide total area between your piece 1, 2, and 3. Like, it creates a box between all 3 of those pieces, and it tries to create a set which makes a box with a large total area. It's, like I say, it's fairly complex math stuff. So I picked up Tails' upgrade, and I immediately messed up the first thing we're trying to do with Tails, which is a hover jump to skip a cycle. The hover mechanic is, you know, pretty well known, even in a casual sense, that it can help you cross wide gaps, but it can also help you jump higher than intended, and I'm using pause buffers to aid this where necessary, such as right here for this cage skip, where the idea is that if you initiate the boost as soon as possible after you start jumping, whilst you still have upward momentum, it boosts that upward momentum a little more than is intended, and it makes you go slightly higher than usual. It's, in absolute terms, it's not much more extra height, but just because of the way all the Tails stages are designed, it's enough extra height to break some intended and unintended level routes, either letting you skip cycles or go out of bounds in particular places. The out of bounds stuff is a lot more prevalent in the later Tales stages, and it shows some of the design philosophy of this game, which is generally to the tune of, if the player wasn't intended to be able to get high enough on a particular wall, that part of the wall just isn't solid. I assume that's something to save, like, memory or whatever, like to, you know, make performance easier. But it basically means that in any case in this game, if you can go high enough, you can just go through a wall because it's no longer there. And Tales' walls, they don't need to be very high for that, because you are not really supposed to be able to go higher than the height of a jump as Tales. So you'd be surprised just how many walls you can fly over as Tales once you get into stages like Hidden Base. Alright. So coming into Aquatic Mine now, this is a stage which is notorious for its free piece checks, chiefly because when you go into the stage there's an intro cutscene. And in this cutscene, it's possible to see several free pieces. I'm checking locations visually now. It doesn't look like I got any, but we're gonna see. Okay, I don't have a ping yet. Okay, so not having a radar ping by the time I get to the pulley, that just equals a reset, especially if I don't have a free piece. It's not likely that I have a good piece set if I don't have a ping by that time. I did see a free piece when I was going up this time. So I'm gonna grab this first. Send me in the right direction, please, thank you. And my third piece is in the ghost room, okay? Can hopefully wall run here? No. I'm not very good at the wall runs in this stage. The slanted signs there, however, I'm decent at clipping out. The signs in this stage, as you can see, they can be used to wall run and they can be used to clip out of bounds very easily. There's ways that you can finagle getting onto the slanted surface of the sign and then use a punch to gain some forward momentum. That transfers to the wall and then you can just freely run on the wall as Knuckles. Or if you have the camera against the wall and then attempt to glide after a short hop, the sign basically forces you out of bounds, and it's very reliable, and you can cut out a lot of navigation in Aquatic Mine by doing that, as long as you know where to go out of bounds, because getting the camera to follow you once you're out of bounds, that's often the tricky part. And if you're going for some particular pieces which are, you know, height sensitive, or trying to get into a room which isn't at the bottom of the stage, it's very possible to just miss that and either die completely or need to reattempt the clip out from scratch. So Route 101 is a driving stage. There really isn't too much to say about this stage other than you can see that I'm drifting. And the idea with this stage is you want to be constantly drifting because it allows you to exceed the regular speed cap. There's a boost speed cap which you can basically stay at on a permanent basis whilst you're drifting. The only thing that slows you down is colliding with things and going up hills. So for the most part, I'm saving my boosts for after I go uphill or collide with an object, so that I can just maintain the maximum speed value. If there have been any donations, now is the perfect time for them. That ring trail's pretty tricky. Okay, it's pretty important to get that boost there, that's good. And mid 119 lap 2 time, I'm not unhappy with that. I just don't want to see a 120 on lap 2 because it makes some of the car locations in lap 3 a little difficult to work with. The cars are not RNG in this stage, they're on fixed patterns and they progress at the same pace always. I'm not sure how I spun out there, but okay. There's worse places to spin out in this stage, and there's honestly worse things that can happen in this stage. This isn't a stage where you typically like expect things to go very badly, but it's possible to fully die in this stage, either by going over a barrier, just falling into the water, or one of the strangest things that can happen is that the cars that are progressing along with me, once they reach a specific point at the end of the track, the cars despawn. But if you hit a car right as it's despawning, it despawns the entire stage with it. And then, yeah, you just fall and die. And as you can see, this is a long stage, it's over 2 minutes, and there are no checkpoints in this stage. So you can basically finish the stage, be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then lose over 2 minutes just because the game is like, that, I disagree, you have to play the stage again. It just does that sometimes. It's a little unfriendly in that way. Alright, so 220, yeah, I spun out. It's not great. That's not a great time, but I spun out, so what are you going to do? Coming into Hidden Base now. you may remember me talking about being able to do out of bounds and all that sort of weird stuff. This stage has a lot of it. There's some of the stage resembles regular gameplay, and a lot of it doesn't. So the first bit kind of does. We're going. You're not strictly supposed to be on top of these without collapsing them, but whatever, it still works, it still looks fairly normal, and then you can just fly straight through this wall, because again, if you're not supposed to be up there, then it's just not solid. This barrier is thankfully just short enough for me to get over with a hover jump and skip out this section. We can use another hover jump to cross this section after this pulley. Hopefully I've got enough height for this. Yeah, just. That was pretty close though. Now, same thing here, just also hover jump over this gap. This isn't really so much a hover jump though, this is just me jumping and using the intended function of the hover to fall more slowly. This does require a precise hover jump though, which I missed. Pretty tricky to get the input order correct there, and to also get it quickly enough to be worth it. Typically when you are using a pause buffer there, you're trying to get two A inputs as close together as possible, like separated by no more than a few frames. But because of the speed that you're trying to do it at, it can make it easy to accidentally switch or, you know, interpose the input order. So also going over the top of this section, not strictly intended. 114 check. I can't just run over that floor there with that timer. That's one thing to be aware of in this stage generally. And now we're just going to cut out pretty much all of this section by going out of bounds. Whoops, okay. Yeah, you need to make sure you get on top of there first. That's pretty easy to mess up that jump. Particularly because I tried to take it in the fastest and straightest manner possible, which it does increase the risk of that, unfortunately. I just need to pay attention to the placement of my jump, so... Yeah, like, I needed to just hold A a little longer there, as well as watching where I started the jump from. Ah, just two lock-ons? Come on. I wanted all three so that I could collapse these a little earlier. Come on, there we go. Cornered a little too sharply on the ground there, and then Tails was just completely stopped. Like, going fast? What's that? I don't understand how to do that. It's something that happens, like I say, fairly frequently with Tails. It's just one of those weird things that when you watch like top level runners play this game, it looks really easy, especially the Tails stages, but it's a pretty common phenomenon that like newer runners and people who are learning the game, they hate the Tails stages because they can't go fast in it, it feels awful to play, and then just like, they look at top level players like, how are these people going so fast? It feels really, really difficult to get good with Tails, honestly. Now, Pyramid Cave, this is, in terms of like density of tech and tricks, this is probably the most complex stage in the game, where you just run the full gamut of things that Sonic is capable of. I've already done like, you know, several things, riding floors in particular ways to go faster, picking up another upgrade here so that I can, well, I can bounce, but I want to do it whilst I'm moving forward like that, so I can just bounce straight up a wall. The way that the bounce bracelet works is that for whatever reason, if you hit a wall whilst you are bouncing, the game converts your current horizontal momentum into vertical momentum. So however fast you were going forwards, you suddenly go that fast upwards, and Sonic can go forwards pretty quickly just by spin dashing. So you can get an immediate bounce straight up on virtually any sheer wall surface in the game. So in these hallways, I'm trying to ride like the slopes so that the game thinks I'm going down instead of straight forward. So it forces me to accelerate going down those hallways. Now using the bounce bracelet, you can get on any sloped surface, temporarily reassign the direction of gravity, and you can use a bounce to maintain that skewed gravity direction. And you can see there clearly what the idea is, that you are trying to just land on a wall that's fairly far away. And you can maintain a short wall run just long enough so that you can get a jump off and just progress on as normal. There's one more gravity bounce like that at the end of the stage. Please bounce, Excel, don't homing attack. One more super bounce here, missed it slightly. It's difficult to get intended super bounces when you are approaching a wall at an angle. Like super bounces, whoops. Yeah, the end of the stage is pretty tricky there if you don't take the path that you intend to. It's very easy to get thrown off with what you intend to do at the end of that stage. What on earth? Alright. I'm gonna knuckle down here and just make sure I get this, first of all. Wow. I mean, it's been a while since I've done a marathon run of this, but nothing like this. This is silly. This is like not a particularly challenging part of Pyramid Cave, I wouldn't say. But I'm gonna say this has been like the one actually bad stage of the run so far. Like, none of the stages have been particularly awful, but this has made up for it. So yeah, we'll just say this is going to be the one bad stage of the run, and the rest of the run's going to be pretty clean. Tell you what is going to happen. I'm going to get perfect Death Chamber RNG. I'm going to get like 2 free pieces in Death Chamber. It's going to be like a sub 40-second stage, and then it's going to make up for that. It's not going to make up for that because that was a lot of time lost, but Death Chamber is a stage with a lot of RNG variance. Like, I think you can realistically lose at least 30 seconds between like optimal RNG and really bad RNG, even assuming perfect execution the whole way through. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. Okay, so piece 1 already with a green ping. That's a pretty good start. 2 Mouths is not literally the best first piece because I don't think it leads on to what we call confirmed sets, where just after getting piece 1 and 2 I can already tell what my piece 3 is going to be, but it is nonetheless a very good first piece. Beautiful Woman on the Flame. This is in the blue room. So this is making me... Okay, I don't need to... I told you. I told you. I told you I was going to get good RNG in this stage. I don't need to wonder where my third piece is because I already have it. So, yeah, alright, that's fine. Just make tons of mistakes in Pyramid Cave. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe you just... The game just, you know... If you're like, wow, you've been playing really badly, alright, throw you a bone. Give you a really good RNG set. Like, a 40 without a death, that's incredibly good. That basically matches what I got in my PB. And my PB has some of the best RNG on the Hero Story leaderboard, so that's a little scary to think. Like, I didn't deserve that after that in Pyramid Cave, but I'm also not going to knock it. Like, you know, I'll take that, that's whatever. So, King Boom Boo. This is the start of a short boss gauntlet. I say short because it's 2 bosses. It's just King Boom Boo and then Egg Golem. I'm going to attempt a little maneuver at the start here to get him to come towards me a bit earlier. Now dig to get fireballed, and I can hit this ghost before it runs away. The ghost normally runs away once it gets line of sight to you, but it doesn't do that whilst King Boom Boo is laughing after having hit you. And the fireball thankfully launches you with a lot of momentum, so you can just get that early. We can also kill him early by just following him around and chaining 4 punches to him with a pretty precise movement angle so that we can keep up, and just waiting for his iframes to run out. You get pretty much just enough time to chain a few hits together and kill him in one cycle there. Pretty comfortable sub 40 fight. Now, Egg Golem is a much more difficult boss fight. We're going to use the same super bounces as Sonic as was being done in Pyramid Cave, but the important element of a super bounce is that the bounce needs to occur before you contact a wall, and there is not very much space between where I'm starting and the wall here, so it's an almost frame-perfect input every time I'm performing a super bounce here. Like, you've got pretty much 5 frames to perform what I would call 2.5 inputs. So, like, something typically needs to be frame perfect. There are, like, multiple inputs involved, and one of them is probably going to have to be frame perfect. And I am messing these up a lot right now. There we go. I just need one more to stop doing these. There we go. But that's a... Okay. I'm not going to get greedy. I'm apparently not super bouncing very well right now, so I am not going to get greedy. I'm just going to wait for him to attack me normally. Dodge out the way of his head. Do this. Okay, I've got to go for one more now. And that's what we call a greed bounce, where you can typically finish the fight in normal fashion by just going up the back, or waiting for another head smash hit, or you can try and go for another super bounce, which, yeah, like I say, we call it a greed bounce, and yeah, really got punished by Egg Golem this time. Apparently, this isn't the day for doing almost frame-perfect stuff in consecutive fashion. So coming into the end game now. Last few stages, space stages, Tails' Eternal Engine. These stages all have major skips, and they're all different degrees of frightening and intimidating. Tails' skip is intimidating because it's a very temperamental clip out, which you don't really get multiple attempts at. Not without resetting the stage, and I'm currently at 0 lives, so I'd need to take a game over to reset the stage. Alright, that almost clipped out. I've got one more attempt on the other boxes. Thank God! Thank God I didn't have to reset the stage there. So yeah, you can approach those boxes with maximum speed and just the correct angle, and then jump to shoot a single shot which breaks both boxes simultaneously, and if all those variables coincide in just the correct manner, you just about manage to get under the metal box, which then falls on you and forces you out of bounds. And as if all of that wasn't enough, it is possible, depending on the exact situation, for the metal box to fall on you without pushing you out of bounds, and then you're stuck inside the metal box, and you generally need to reset the stage anyway. So yeah, this skip is like, man, when this skip was discovered, it saved a lot of time, like in the region of 40 seconds, which is major at this point, but it is such a intimidating skip to go for that some runners just decided they didn't want to bother with this category anymore. They were like, there's already enough nonsense in this category and really punishing RNG, and now I need to go for this, and I like need to get it first try or I lose a bunch of time. I'm like, some people just didn't want to deal with that. Like, that skip is serious business. So coming now into Meteor Herd, this is the final RNG stage. RNG has been pretty, you know, up and down in this run. Death Chamber was thankfully very good. I'm hoping that I'm going to get one more set of really good RNG here. This is my favourite Knuckle stage to play. It's very open, it's very easy to move around in. Dangerous Liquid. This can be in one of two spots. It can either be in the middle, where I'm going to now, or it's going to be at the top. Okay, that's very good. That is the better spot for it to be to. Second piece is... okay, it's at the top. It's not the best piece at the top, but it is preferable to go up rather than go down, because it's a lot easier to go down in this stage. So it's typically going to be easier for me to reach wherever my third piece is going to be from the top than it is from the bottom. Powerless, okay. That is the dump truck here. So pretty good Meteor Herd set. This is going to be around 40 seconds. Yeah, high 39. I'm really not unhappy with that. That beats the Meteor Herd I had in my PB by a good couple of seconds. And as I said, my PB already had very good RNG. So I can definitely deal with that. Just to give an idea of how strong the RNG variance is in the Knuckle stages though, it is known what the perfect RNG is, as in like the absolute optimal RNG in each stage is known. An optimal Meteor Herd is like 16-17 seconds. So if I'd gotten literally perfect RNG, I would have saved an additional at least 20 seconds in that stage. That's how crazy the RNG variance is, even when you're doing stuff quote-unquote correctly. And by extension, the Death Chamber, where I was like, wow, this is really good, and I got like basically a 41, a perfect Death Chamber again can be sub 30 very comfortably. Like, it can be a mid 20 if it's perfect RNG without too much difficulty. So Crazy Gadget. Oh boy, I don't have lives. I'm going to get one extra life as I'm approaching CGSS. Crazy Gadget Skip. For a lot of people, the big kahuna of Hero Story, that it looks really impressive, it looks really difficult, and it is really difficult, where I'm going to need to change gravity. I'm going to need to do a spin dash to weave between a couple of kill planes to get out of bounds, then have the camera invert on me, and I'm going to need to just fall into the goal ring without being able to see where I'm going, and if I miss the goal ring, it's an immediate death. Okay, so I'm out of bounds. I successfully dodged the kill planes. Changing my control stick angle here so that Sonic hopefully falls in the right direction. Whew! That skip makes me really, really nervous. This is one of those games where, you know when speedrunners use like a heart rate monitor? I'd be really surprised if there's many runners who, once they like get into Crazy Gadget on a, you know, PB pace run, their heart rate doesn't like, I mean, not necessarily double, but it's going to go up a lot, I would expect, in Crazy Gadget, because that's basically the point of the run where you're like, okay, this is serious, now we've got this thing in front of me, which I need to get first try, and it's so easy to get wrong. Like, wow, yeah. Eggman sucks, by the way. He's like... Casually, that's a very difficult fight, but when you understand the enemy AI and you like understand how to manipulate his actions, keep him in a specific position, that's really not a challenging fight. Where he pretty much behaves the same way every time and you can just, you know, run circles around him pretty much. Now, Final Rush. Final stage, another major skip. Thankfully, this one is much easier than Eternal Engine and Crazy Gadget, so naturally, it's going to be the one that I mess up somehow. So I'm maintaining skewed gravity again from jumping off the rail sideways, a very slanted rail. I now want to fall in a particular direction so that I'm basically falling sideways as high as I can. Reset gravity after a particular amount of time and realign it to a different direction. And now I'm just falling towards the end of the stage. As in, there's going to be another 30 seconds of this and that's the stage. Probably when the timer reaches 104, 105, you're going to see the stage come back into view. So I'm expecting 4, 3, 2, 1, bang. Yeah, that's about right. Now I'm making sure to avoid the middle of this middle column so that I avoid one last kill plane. Now I can go towards the middle, which is where the goal ring is going to be. One last wall to get over, and we just fall straight into the goal ring, and that is Final Rush. Yeah, if you want to actually like see the stages at the end of this run, a hero story speedrun is not necessarily the place to do it. Now you can watch a restricted skips speedrun. That is a good way to see the actual end stages. In Shadow 2, Final Boss, this is hopefully a very trivial affair, where I'm just going to use some rhythmic homing attacks to keep him in a particular pattern, and keep hitting him between his own homing attacks. Time is on the 5th hit. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's time. Yay, a 35 RTA, which looks really good, but I also used the emblem skip glitch to save 2 minutes artificially, but that's the secret of doing marathon runs. Nobody knows it's a bad run if you don't let them know it's a bad run. So that's Sonic Adventure 2, Hero Story. Thank you guys very much for joining me, and thanks very much to SpeedGaming for having me, letting me take part in raising money for this cause. Very happy to help out as always. And there's more. If you like Sonic, don't go away. There's more Sonic coming up, and it's going to be really good. So please stick around for more Sonic goodness. Thank you guys very much once again for having me, and I will let y'all start getting set up for the next game.